Have you ever had that moment when a single question shatters the carefully constructed walls you've built around your heart? When your best friend looks at you with eyes that see through every defense, every excuse, every lie you've told yourself. That's exactly what happened to me on a rainy Thursday evening in Seattle, and nothing, absolutely nothing, has been the same since. My name is Adrian Cole, and for 27 years I thought I had everything figured out. I was the guy with the plan, the one who color-coded his calendar and meal prepped on Sundays. I worked as a graphic designer at a tech startup, lived in a modest apartment with exposed brick walls and too many succulents, and spent my weekends with the person who knew me better than anyone else in the world. Ethan Rivers. Just thinking his name sends a familiar warmth through my chest, the kind that I'd been ignoring for far too long. We'd been best friends since college when we were randomly assigned as roommates freshman year. He was the chaos to my order, the spontaneity to my structure, the golden retriever energy to my anxious cat disposition. Where I saw obstacles, he saw adventures. Where I hesitated, he leaped. For 6 years, we'd been inseparable. We knew each other's coffee orders by heart, could communicate in nothing but movie quotes, and had a tradition of Adventure Thursdays where we'd explore some hidden corner of the city. We'd seen each other through breakups, career changes, family drama, and everything in between. But on that particular Thursday, when the rain hammered against the windows of his apartment and the city lights blurred into watercolor streaks, Ethan asked me a question that would unravel everything I thought I knew about friendship, love, and the walls we build to protect ourselves from the truth. Adrian, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, have you ever wondered what it would be like if we stopped pretending? The rain had started around noon, one of those relentless Seattle downpours that turns the city into a study of grays and silvers. I'd canceled our usual Adventure Thursday plans, too wet, too dreary, I'd said, but Ethan insisted I come over anyway. We'll have an indoor adventure, he'd texted, complete with a ridiculous number of emojis: a house, a pizza slice, a movie camera, and inexplicably a dinosaur. That was Ethan, always finding the light, even in the darkest, dreariest moments. I arrived at his Capitol Hill apartment around 7, shaking rain from my jacket and immediately being assaulted by his Labrador mix, Pepper, who seemed to think I'd been gone for years rather than 3 days. Ethan's place was exactly what you'd expect from someone who lived like every day might be his last adventure. Vintage movie posters covering the walls, a guitar he barely played propped in the corner, string lights casting everything in a warm, amber glow, and an impressive collection of plants that somehow thrived despite his chaotic watering schedule. You're late, Ethan called from the kitchen, though there was no judgment in his voice. There never was. I already started the pizza. I got your favorite, margarita with extra basil, even though you're wrong and pepperoni is objectively superior. I smiled despite my rain-dampened mood. Pepperoni is what children order, Ethan. I'm young at heart. He emerged from the kitchen, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest that I'd been expertly ignoring for the better part of 2 years. Ethan was effortlessly beautiful in a way that seemed almost unfair: tousled dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck, warm brown eyes that crinkled when he smiled, a jawline that could cut glass, and a lean, athletic build that came from his weekend rock climbing habit. He was wearing a faded Nirvana t-shirt and gray sweatpants, barefoot and completely at ease in his own skin in a way I'd always envied. You're starring, he said, grinning that lopsided grin that had gotten him out of trouble more times than I could count. I'm judging your outfit, I shot back, though my throat felt tight. Very Seattle grunge meets lazy Sunday. It's Thursday and you're one to talk, Mr. I own 15 identical button-downs. He grabbed 2 beers from the fridge and tossed me one. Come on, I've queued up a documentary about urban exploration. It's either that or we finally watch that French film you've been going on about. The French film is a masterpiece of modern cinema. It's 3 hours of people talking about their feelings. So an average Thursday for us. He laughed and the sound filled the apartment with warmth that had nothing to do with the heating. We settled onto his oversized couch, Pepper immediately claiming the space between us, and for a while everything was normal. We watched the documentary, shared the pizza, debated the ethics of urban exploration, and fell into the comfortable rhythm we'd perfected over years of friendship. But something felt different tonight. I kept catching Ethan watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, something vulnerable and uncertain that didn't match his usual confident demeanor. During a particularly tense moment in the documentary when explorers were navigating a crumbling hospital, his hand brushed against mine on the couch cushion. Neither of us moved it away. My heart was hammering so loudly I was certain he could hear it. When the documentary ended, Ethan turned off the TV but didn't turn on any other lights. The apartment was lit only by the string lights and the ambient glow from the city outside, rain still drumming against the windows. Pepper had migrated to his dog bed, leaving us alone on the couch, suddenly too close and not close enough at the same time. Adrian, Ethan said, and there was something in his voice that made me turn to face him fully. His expression was serious now, all traces of his usual playfulness gone. I need to ask you something. Okay, my mouth felt dry despite the beer. I set my bottle down on the coffee table, my hands suddenly needing something to do. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I'd seen 1,000 times but never directed at me. We've been friends for 6 years. Best friends, I corrected automatically. Best friends, he agreed, and something flickered across his face, pain, maybe, or longing. And in those 6 years, you've seen me date people. I've seen you date people. We've been each other's plus ones to weddings and parties. We've been there for the breakups and the makeups and everything in between. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Where was this going? And every single time, Adrian, I found myself comparing them to you. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Every date I went on, every person I kissed, every relationship I tried to build, I kept thinking, they don't get me like Adrian does, they don't make me laugh like he does, they don't feel like home. My breath caught in my throat. The room seemed to contract around us, the rest of the world falling away until there was nothing but Ethan's eyes on mine, so open and vulnerable it hurt to look at. Ethan, I started, but he held up a hand. Let me finish, please. I've been trying to work up the courage to say this for months, maybe years, and if I don't say it now, I never will. He took a shaky breath. I watch you, Adrian. I watch the way you furrow your brow when you're concentrating, the way you always double-check that you locked your car even though you know you did, the way you cry at movie endings even when they're happy. I watch you be kind to strangers and patient with Pepper and brilliant at your work, and I can't keep pretending that what I feel for you is just friendship. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by the rain and my own thundering heartbeat. Adrian, he said again, and now his hand was on mine, warm and solid and real. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if we stopped pretending? I stared at him, my mind racing and completely blank at the same time. This was Ethan, my best friend, my person, the one constant in my chaotic life. And he was looking at me like I was the answer to a question he'd been asking for years. Stopped pretending what? I managed to whisper, even though I knew, God, I knew exactly what he meant. That we're just friends, that this, he gestured between us, is normal, that I don't think about kissing you every single time you smile, that I don't lie awake at night wondering what it would be like to wake up next to you, that I'm not completely, utterly, hopelessly in love with you. The world tilted on its axis. You're in love with me, my voice sounded foreign to my own ears. I'm in love with you, he confirmed, and there were tears in his eyes now, vulnerability written across every feature. And maybe I'm an idiot for risking our friendship like this. Maybe I'm about to lose the most important person in my life, but I can't do this anymore, Adrian. I can't keep pretending that you're not the first person I think about when I wake up and the last person I think about before I sleep. I can't keep acting like my heart doesn't literally ache when you leave. I can't keep watching you date people who don't deserve you and pretending I'm not jealous. I opened my mouth but no words came out. My entire body was trembling, adrenaline and fear and something that felt dangerously like hope coursing through my veins. Say something, Ethan pleaded, his hand tightening on mine. Please, Adrian, even if it's to tell me I've ruined everything, just say something. But I couldn't, because admitting the truth meant tearing down walls I'd spent years constructing, meant acknowledging feelings I'd buried so deep I'd almost convinced myself they didn't exist, meant risking the most important relationship in my life for something that felt too big, too terrifying, too real. I started then stopped, my throat felt like it was closing. I need time, I need to think. The hope in Ethan's eyes dimmed but he nodded, withdrawing his hand. Okay, I understand. Ethan. It's okay, Adrian, his voice was thick with unshed tears. Take all the time you need, I'm not going anywhere. I stood up abruptly, grabbed my jacket and practically ran to the door. Pepper whined, sensing the tension, and Ethan didn't try to stop me. As I stepped out into the rain, I heard him whisper something that shattered what was left of my composure. I love you however you'll let me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain that had followed me home like a melancholy soundtrack. My phone sat on my nightstand, screen dark, but I kept glancing at it, half hopping and half dreading that Ethan would text. He didn't. I'm in love with you. The words replayed in my mind on an endless loop in Ethan's voice, with that particular vulnerability I'd never heard from him before. Ethan, who was always so confident, so sure of himself, had looked at me with tears in his eyes and bared his soul. And I'd run away. I rolled onto my side, pulling my blanket tighter around myself and forced myself to confront the truth I'd been avoiding for so long. When had it started? When had my best friend become the person I thought about constantly? When had his laugh become my favorite sound? When had the space between us on his couch started feeling like the most significant distance in the world? I thought back to college, to those early days of our friendship. Ethan had been dating a guy named Marcus, then tall, athletic, studying pre-med. I remembered the sick feeling in my stomach every time I saw them together, the way I'd convinced myself it was just because I was worried Marcus wasn't good enough for my friend. I remembered how relieved I'd felt when they broke up, how quickly I'd showed up at Ethan's dorm with ice cream and terrible movies. "You're a good friend," Ethan had said that night, his eyes red from crying. "The best," I'd replied, and even then I'd felt the lie of it. Then there was the time junior year when I'd been dating someone, a guy named David who worked at the campus bookstore. Ethan had been weird about it, distant in a way he'd never been before. We'd gotten into our first real fight because I'd canceled our movie night for a date. Ethan had accused me of abandoning our friendship and I'd accused him of being jealous. We'd both been right and wrong at the same time. David and I broke up after 3 months. I told Ethan it was because we weren't compatible, but the truth was David had said something that haunted me. "You talk about Ethan the way people talk about the love of their life." I'd laughed it off, gaslighted myself into believing it was ridiculous. But David's words had planted a seed, and over the years it had grown into something I could no longer ignore. Every Adventure Thursday, every inside joke, every comfortable silence, every time our hands brushed or our eyes met across a crowded room, it had all been building to this moment, to Ethan's question, to my cowardice. Have you ever wondered what it would be like if we stopped pretending? Yes, God, yes, I had wondered. I'd wondered what it would be like to kiss him, to wake up tangled together, to tell him I loved him without the caveat of like a brother or as a friend. I'd wondered and I'd fantasized and I'd ached with wanting something I told myself I couldn't have. But wanting it and admitting it were two very different things. Because what if it didn't work? What if we tried being together and the magic that made us work as friends disappeared? What if I lost him completely? Ethan was my person, my home base, the one relationship I knew I could count on. Risking that for romance felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, and I'd never been good with heights. My phone buzzed and I grabbed it so fast I nearly dropped it, but it wasn't Ethan, it was my sister Maya. "Heard you're having a crisis, wanna talk?" I stared at the message, confused. How did she? Another text. "Ethan called me, said you might need someone to talk to. He didn't tell me what happened, just said you were going through something." Of course he did. Even in his own heartbreak, Ethan was taking care of me. The realization made my eyes burn with tears. I called Maya, she picked up on the first ring. "Adrian, you okay?" "No," I admitted, and suddenly I was crying, really crying, in a way I hadn't since our dad died 3 years ago. "Maya, I think I've really messed up. Tell me everything." So I did. I told her about Ethan's confession, about my reaction, about the years of denial and fear and walls. Maya listened without interrupting, the way she'd always been able to do, and when I finally finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Adrian," she said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Yeah." "If Ethan met someone tomorrow, someone who wasn't afraid to love him back, how would you feel?" The question hit me like a physical blow. I imagined it, Ethan with someone else, laughing the way he laughed with me, sharing adventures, falling in love, Ethan's hand in someone else's hand, Ethan's eyes lighting up for someone else, Ethan saying "I love you" to someone who had the courage to say it back. "I'd be destroyed," I whispered. "Then you have your answer, don't you?" "But Maya, what if? What if it doesn't work? What if you lose him? What if? Her voice was gentle but firm. "Adrian, you've spent your whole life playing it safe. You plan everything, you minimize risks, you build walls to protect yourself from getting hurt. And I love that about you, your caution has saved you from a lot of pain. But this is Ethan. This is the person who knows all your flaws and loves you anyway. The person who shows up for you every single time." And you're really going to let fear rob you of the possibility of being truly happy. I'm scared, I admitted. Of course you are, love is terrifying, but you know what's more terrifying? Regret, living your whole life wondering what if, being safe and comfortable and completely alone. We talked for another hour, Maya sharing stories I'd never heard about her own relationship with her wife, about the risks they'd taken, the fears they'd faced. By the time we hung up, it was 3 in the morning and I knew what I had to do. But I needed one more day to get my thoughts in order, to figure out how to articulate everything I was feeling. I texted Ethan, "Can we talk tomorrow, your place?" His response came immediately, like he'd been awake too. "Anytime, I'll be here." Then, after a pause, "For what it's worth, I don't regret telling you, you deserve to know the truth." I stared at that message for a long time, my heart aching with how much I loved him, how much I'd always loved him. The next day crawled by with excruciating slowness. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't concentrate on anything except the conversation I needed to have. I left the office early, stopped by a flower shop, then second-guessed myself and left without buying anything. I drove around the city aimlessly, rehearsing speeches in my head that sounded ridiculous when spoken aloud. Finally, at 6 o'clock, I stood outside Ethan's apartment door, my heart hammering against my ribs. I could hear Pepper barking inside, Ethan's voice telling her to calm down. Normal sounds, familiar sounds, but nothing would be normal after this conversation. I knocked. Ethan opened the door and my breath caught. He looked exhausted, with dark circles under his eyes and his hair disheveled in a way that suggested he'd been running his hands through it all day. But when he saw me, his whole face softened. "Hey," he said quietly. "Hey. Come in." We sat on the same couch as the night before. But this time there was a careful distance between us. Pepper sensed the tension and stayed in her bed. The rain had stopped, but the city outside still looked gray and uncertain. "Adrian," Ethan started, but I held up my hand. "Please let me go first." He nodded and I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words for feelings too big for language. "I've been thinking about what you said about us, about pretending." I met his eyes, forcing myself to hold his gaze even though every instinct screamed to look away. "And you're right, we have been pretending, but it wasn't just you, Ethan, I've been pretending too." His expression shifted, hope and fear warring on his features. "I've been pretending that I don't count down the days until our adventure Thursdays, that I don't save things I see during the week just to tell you about them, that I don't feel like my chest is going to explode every time you smile at me." My voice cracked, but I pushed forward. "I've been pretending that you're just my best friend when the truth is you're so much more than that, you always have been." "Adrian," his voice was barely a whisper. "I'm not good at this, Ethan. I'm not good at being vulnerable or taking risks or admitting when I'm terrified. I like my plans and my safety nets and my carefully constructed walls. But you know what I realized last night? The scariest thing isn't losing you. The scariest thing is never really having you. It's living the rest of my life wondering what could have been if I'd just been brave enough to say yes." I reached across the couch and took his hand, threading our fingers together. His skin was warm, his grip tight. "So yes," I said, tears streaming down my face now. "Yes, I've wondered what it would be like if we stopped pretending. I've wondered what it would be like to kiss you, to hold you, to tell you I love you without any qualifiers. And I'm sorry it took me so long to admit it. I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I made you feel like you had to be the brave one." "You love me," Ethan's voice broke on the words, his own tears matching mine. "I love you," I confirmed, and saying it out loud felt like breaking through the surface after being underwater for too long. "I've loved you for so long, Ethan, I just didn't know how to let myself feel it." The space between us disappeared. I'm not sure who moved first, maybe we both did, but suddenly Ethan's hands were cupping my face, his forehead pressed against mine, both of us crying and laughing at the same time. "Say it again," he whispered. "I love you." "Again." "I love you, Ethan Rivers. I love you, I love you, I love you." And then he was kissing me, and the world exploded into sensation. His lips were soft and urgent, tasting like salt from our tears and something sweeter underneath. His hands slid into my hair, pulling me closer, and I wrapped my arms around his waist, eliminating any remaining distance between us. It was desperate and gentle, passionate and tender, 6 years of longing poured into a single moment. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against mine again, his eyes closed, a smile playing at his lips. I've imagined kissing you about 1,000 times, he murmured. None of my fantasies came close to the real thing. I laughed, giddy and overwhelmed. I can't believe we wasted so much time. We weren't wasting time, we were building something real. He pulled back just enough to look me in the eyes. Adrian, our friendship isn't something we have to sacrifice for this, it's the foundation we get to build on. Every inside joke, every adventure, every moment we've shared, it all matters, it all counts. He was right, what we had wasn't conventional, but it was ours. We'd been writing this love story for 6 years, chapter by chapter, adventure by adventure. We'd just been too afraid to call it what it was. So what now? I asked. Ethan grinned, that lopsided smile that made my heart skip. Now we order Thai food because I'm starving, we watch that French film you keep talking about, and we figure this out together one day at a time. No pressure, no expectations, just us. That sounds perfect. We ordered food, curled up together on the couch, actually together this time, with me tucked under Ethan's arm and his hand playing with my hair, and started the movie. But neither of us paid much attention to it. We were too busy stealing kisses, tracing patterns on each other's skin, murmuring confessions we'd kept locked away for too long. I used to get jealous when you'd go on dates, Ethan admitted during a particularly slow scene. Like, irrationally jealous, I'd spend the whole night imagining what you were doing, who you were with, whether they were making you smile. I knew, I said, grinning at his shocked expression. You're not as subtle as you think, you'd always be weird the next day, asking pointed questions about how it went. And you never said anything. I didn't want it to be true. If I acknowledged that you were jealous, I'd have to acknowledge why you were jealous. And that meant admitting why I was secretly relieved every time you had a bad date. He laughed, pressing a kiss to my temple. We're both idiots. Idiots in love. Idiots in love, he agreed. Pepper eventually migrated from her bed to the couch, wedging herself between us with a disgruntled huff, as if to say it was about time we figured things out. We laughed and made room for her, and something about that moment, the three of us tangled together, comfortable and easy and right, made everything click into place. This wasn't just romance, it wasn't just passion or attraction or any single thing, this was home. Over the next few weeks, we navigated the transition from best friends to partners with surprising ease. We already knew each other's rhythms, each other's moods, each other's needs. The change was less about learning something new and more about finally allowing ourselves to express what had always been there. We told our friends gradually. Maya already knew, obviously, and she cried happy tears when we officially told her we were together. Our college friend group had a betting pool, apparently, they'd all seen it coming years ago. My coworker Sarah just said, finally, the sexual tension every time he picked you up from work was unbearable. There was no sexual tension, I protested. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Adrian, there was so much sexual tension you could have powered the building. I was being professional. You were being oblivious. We established new traditions while keeping our old ones. Adventure Thursdays continued, but now they sometimes ended with making out in the car or slow dancing in empty parking lots under the streetlights. We alternated whose apartment we stayed at, though we both acknowledged that eventually we'd want to find a place together, something that was ours, not his or mine. The intimacy between us deepened in ways both physical and emotional. I learned that Ethan was a morning person who liked to wake up slowly, with kisses and quiet conversation. He learned that I needed verbal reassurance, that my anxiety sometimes made me spiral, that I showed love through small acts of service. We learned each other's bodies with the same care and attention we'd learned each other's minds, slowly, thoroughly, reverently. There were challenges, of course. Old insecurities resurfaced. I worried constantly that I wasn't enough, that Ethan would realize he'd made a mistake, that I'd somehow messed this up the way I'd messed up previous relationships. Ethan had his own fears, that he'd loved me for so long, that he'd idealized me, that reality couldn't match his expectations, that I might leave when things got hard. We talked through it all, every fear, every doubt, every moment of uncertainty. We chose each other over and over in ways big and small. 3 months into our relationship, Ethan planned an adventure Thursday that he insisted had to be a surprise. I hated surprises, he knew this, but I trusted him enough to go along with it. He picked me up on a Saturday morning instead of Thursday, another break from tradition that made me nervous. He was wearing his hiking boots and had a backpack slung over his shoulder, grinning like he had a secret. "Where are we going?" I asked for the 10th time as we drove north out of Seattle. You'll see. That's what you keep saying. And I'll keep saying it until we get there. We drove for over an hour, winding through increasingly forested roads until Ethan finally pulled into a trailhead parking lot. The area was beautiful, tall cedars towering overhead, the air sharp and clean, morning light filtering through the branches. "We're hiking," I asked. "We're adventuring," he corrected. "Come on." The trail was moderate, climbing gradually through the forest. We walked hand in hand when the path was wide enough, talking about nothing and everything. Ethan pointed out plants and birds, making up ridiculous facts that made me laugh. I worried about rain and bears and getting lost, and he reassured me with endless patience. After about 90 minutes, we emerged into a clearing and I stopped dead in my tracks. We were standing on a rocky outcrop overlooking a stunning vista, mountain peaks stretching into the distance, valleys filled with morning mist, the whole world spread out beneath us in shades of green and blue and gold. It was breathtaking. "Ethan," I whispered, "this is incredible. I found it last month when I went climbing with Ben. I knew immediately that I wanted to bring you here." He squeezed my hand. "I wanted to show you what it looks like when you stop playing it safe, when you take the risk and make the climb and stand at the edge." I turned to face him, and the look in his eyes made my breath catch. "Adrian, these past few months have been the happiest of my life. Getting to love you openly without hiding or pretending, it's everything I never knew I needed." He reached into his backpack and pulled out a small box. Not a ring box, we'd talked about marriage and both agreed we weren't there yet, but something else. Inside were two simple leather bracelets, each with a small silver compass charm. "I know we're not ready for forever yet," Ethan said, his voice thick with emotion. "But I wanted to give you something that says I choose you, I choose us, I choose this adventure we're on together wherever it leads." He tied one bracelet around my wrist and I did the same for him, my hands trembling slightly. The compass caught the sunlight, spinning gently before settling. "The compass represents how you've always been my true north," Ethan continued. "Even when I was lost, even when I was pretending to be something I wasn't, you were the one pointing me home." I pulled him into a kiss, pouring everything I felt into it, gratitude and love and wonder at how lucky I was to have found this with my best friend. When we broke apart, I pressed my forehead to his, both of us grinning like idiots. "You're my home too," I whispered, "my adventure, my everything." We spent the next hour on that outcrop, talking about our future, the places we wanted to travel, the life we wanted to build, the dreams we'd stopped allowing ourselves to dream. Ethan wanted to eventually open his own outdoor adventure company. I wanted to freelance and have more creative control over my work. We both wanted a house with a big yard for Pepper and any future dogs. We wanted to host dinner parties and go on spontaneous road trips and grow old together. "We're really doing this," I said, a statement rather than a question. "We're really doing this," Ethan confirmed. As we hiked back down, I realized that the fear hadn't disappeared. I was still anxious, still prone to overthinking, still terrified of losing him, but now I had something stronger than fear. I had love, I had trust. I had the certainty that whatever challenges came our way, we'd face them together. That evening, we went back to my apartment and cooked dinner together, a chaotic affair involving too much wine and Ethan's questionable knife skills and flour somehow ending up in both our hair. Pepper stole food off the counter while we were distracted by kissing, and we laughed until our sides hurt. After dinner, we sat on my tiny balcony, watching the city lights twinkle to life, Ethan's arm around my shoulders, my hand resting on his chest where I could feel his heartbeat. "Hey Adrian," Ethan said softly. "Yes." "Thank you for being brave enough to say yes." I tilted my head up to look at him. "Thank you for being brave enough to ask." He kissed me, slow and sweet, and in that moment everything was perfect. Not because there were no challenges ahead, there would be plenty, not because we had all the answers, we didn't, but because we had each other, and that was enough. More than enough. A year later, we threw an Adventure Thursday party to celebrate our anniversary, the anniversary of the question that changed everything. Our apartment, we'd moved in together 6 months prior, was filled with friends and family, everyone we loved gathered in one place. Maya cornered me in the kitchen, pulling me into a hug. "You look happy, little brother." "I am happy," I said, and meant it with every fiber of my being, terrifyingly happy. "Good, you deserve it." Across the room, Ethan was telling some elaborate story to a group of friends, gesturing wildly, making everyone laugh. He caught my eye and winked, and I felt that familiar flutter in my chest, the one that told me I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Later, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up, Ethan pulled me close. "Best adventure yet?" he asked. I thought about everything that had led us here, the years of friendship, the fear and denial, the courage it took to finally be honest, the love we'd built brick by brick. I thought about all the adventures still to come, all the challenges we'd face, all the joy we'd find. "Best adventure yet," I confirmed, "but I have a feeling the next one will be even better." "Yes." "Yeah, because I'm doing it with you." And as he kissed me, surrounded by the remnants of our party and the life we were building together, I knew with absolute certainty that some questions don't just change everything, they reveal what was always meant to be.